Business Daily, coming to you live on Trust TV. And in a bid to stabilize its volatile currency and address the ongoing economic challenges, Zimbabwe has announced the introduction of a new currency known as the Zimbabwean gold, also known as the ZiG. And this move marks the sixth attempt by the country to establish a functional local currency since the year 2008. And joining me now from Harare, the capital of Zimbabwe, to discuss this, I have two gentlemen, Malone Gwadu, who is an economist, and Terence Zimwara. Thank you for joining us on Business Daily. Okay, I'll start off with you, Malone Gwadu. You are an economist, obviously, and you monitor the activities closely, or all of these activities closely. But would like you to, give us a background description or explanation as to the rationale around, introducing the new currency at this time.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Zimbabwe was a previously dollarized economy until 2019, when we introduced our local currency through a statutory instrument 33 of 2019, and the rate starting there was 2.2. And then following the successive performance of this currency, there's been large on the downward spiral due to endogenous and exogenous factors. And as of the introduction of the new currency again, the exchange rate was at 1 to 35,000, which was serious depreciation of the currency. So the government then intervened and reoriented the monetary system in line with a commodity, which is gold. And this activity started in 2022, following a volatile exchange rate running the market, and they introduced it through the gold coin, which had good market acceptance. So they then found confidence in adopting a gold commodity or a commodity-backed currency from that particular activity, which then reduced inflationary pressures to some extent, and to some extent ameliorated exchange rate run that was prevalent in the market.
Okay, I will now move to you, Terence Zimwara. I would like for you to, touch on what led to the fall of the previous currency, that is the Zim dollar. There has been, increased talks around mismanagement of funds and all of those. But let's hear from you. How did we get to this point?
Thanks for having me on your show. I believe the issues are still the same. We don't seem to, generate enough foreign currency. So because there's that mismatch, it always gets to this point where our currency gets under pressure and slowly it depreciates. And it is, as rightly Malone explained, those are some of the issues that, make our currency go in that direction. And it has been happening. The hope now is, since this is a gold-backed currency, as they say, the hope is that people have confidence in this, and at least we expect officials to stick to their word, so that you don't get stories like they're printing more than what is actually being backed. And when that happens, perhaps this time it might work around.
Okay, I will move over to you now, Malone Gwadu. We are, from the eyes of, viewers from outside of Zimbabwe, the question now is, what is the way out of this quagmire that has persisted for quite a while now? The authorities have said that there is no going back, to the Zimbabwean dollar or the US dollar. What are your thoughts on all of this?
I would say, firstly, it's important for us in Zimbabwe to have our own currency. There's no doubt about that, but it needs to be supported by authorities taking the right steps in terms of supporting it, as well as the realigning our economy in a way that supports the currency. Authorities need to deal with costly fiscal activities that are inflationary, that increase money supply growth, and that puts pressure on the exchange rate. That is on the supply side of the Zimbabwe dollar, which is now the ZiG. And then on the demand side of foreign currency, our economy is in dire need of diversification. We are a commodity-based economy, and currently there's global commodity price fall. This reduces our foreign currency earning generating capacity and puts pressure on the little currency pool that we have as a country. By so doing, introducing of the gold coin creates an alternative in terms of it being a saving and investment alternative, because beyond the foreign currency demand being productive, there are also speculative and saving endeavors by people to save their monies whenever they earn whatever their money is from in local currency.
Okay, but what has been the levels of acceptance? I understand that there's been, some sort of slow levels of acceptance from the Zimbabwean people and also from the banks especially, and that there are up to 8 currencies that are currently being used for trade and are in circulation. Still on you, Malone, Gwadu.
Well, we are a multi-currency regime fundamentally. We have got about 8 currencies that we mentioned, with the US dollar being the large dominant. And about 80 to 85% of our currency, of our transactions are largely USD based. So it's too early to tell in terms of the market acceptance, because it's only a week after the currency has been introduced. Banks are still recalibrating their systems and aligning these with the new ZiG. And also, the Reserve Bank is still issuing circulars around educating and awareness of how this currency will work. So I would say it's too early to really determine what the market acceptance has been so far. But in the medium to long term, I believe there will be acceptance if the authorities do the right thing and also avoid money supply growth and inflationary pressures in the economy. That will have the depreciation of the local currency and the deviating of the currency away from the gold commodity price that has been locked in currently.
Okay, still on that, Terence, Zimwara, we would also like to hear your thought. Still on the acceptability so far from the people, from the banking sector, and generally from your own lens, how would you say the people of Zimbabwe have accepted the Zimbabwean gold?
Well, I don't know. I haven't seen the physical currency as of yet. But as I was discussing before, I think people, because this is currency, you don't want something like that to not to work. So everyone's hope is for the currency to actually work. How it's going to work, maybe that's part of the challenge, because like now, some shops are now refusing to accept the outgoing currency. But we still have about 21 days where they still have to accept them. So those kind of problems, maybe they create this friction between those who are supposed to accept the new currency and you know what the authorities are trying to do. But what I feel will likely happen is, with time, if everything goes into place, people will still have to accept this new currency. Now, it's a question of our authorities going to do things differently, because I understand now we have a new central bank governor. So is he going to take a different approach, which instills confidence, so that at least, I would hope that when everything is okay, our currency can actually be accepted, say at fuel stations, which they are not currently doing. So the hope is it has to work. I'm sure you guys in Nigeria had the same problem when I think you introduced a new currency. The hope is it has to be accepted so that people can move forward. And this is the same scenario that we are in now. I just hope it works. I don't want it to be like number 9 failed currency or number 10 or whatever the number you want to call it.
Over to you, Malone, Gwadu. We will, like to know, do you see this particular currency actually succeeding? Like Terence has said, he really does hope this one works out and that things are done differently. But what difference would you want to see, considering the way things have been handled in the past? What do you hope to see differently?
Well, I believe so far the mechanics that are there are a promising endeavor for the currency to work. But there are also other aspects that authorities really need to take into consideration and probably create demand for the currency. Demand in the sense that it has to be allowed to be able to settle the same way any other currency is able to settle, both locally and internationally. For example, government is the biggest spender and naturally would want to pay your taxes, with the ZiG being one of the many currencies that are considered for payment of taxes related to government. As well as the private sector also needs to come in terms of support, when their pricing needs to be business oriented and not profit, related or speculative related, because these are some of the feeding aspects that have caused for there to be inflation. Lastly, money supply growth needs to be controlled. Because non-money supply growth, there is a correlation between money supply growth and the inflationary pressures that will then feed into the exchange rate depreciation. So we need to learn from our past that we can prepare ourselves for the future of this particular currency.
Okay, you've touched on inflation, and based on research, I did find out that inflation currently stands at over 50% in Zimbabwe. So far, with this introduction and how much of an impact it is having in the market, has there been, a rising inflation? Or can you just paint a picture for us as to what is actually ongoing in the marketplace, in the banks, and all of these places, so we can have a better understanding on, the situation that is happening at the moment?
So due to the inflationary pressures that have been prevalent for the past, I think, 3 to 6 months, and the economy largely dollarized. We were using the US dollar because of its stability and the hedge instrument for the general population. Now, the monetary policy is then coming in to really propel up back in the market the Zimbabwe dollar. So in a way that is not inflationary, because currently the Zimbabwean people don't have much trust in the local currency because of inflation, and people lose their savings and their values and all those things. So the introduction of the ZiG, that is commodity based, which has got the same features as US dollars in terms of it being a hedge instrument and a saving instrument that is inflation and exchange rate free, that is the point of attraction for the currency. But that is not the only aspect that will sustain the currency going forward. It's one thing to introduce, another thing for it to be sustained. So the sustainability will then be largely reliant on how the authorities will protect the currency from both local pressures as well as international pressures going forward.
Okay, still on you, Malone. You have touched on, the trust deficit between the people and the new currency. But how can this trust deficit be breached? I will like to hear from you first.
Well, like what the governor recently mentioned, confidence cannot be bought, it has to be earned. And trust and confidence are two sides of the same coin. So the trust can only be built over time. But the over time aspect needs to be capacitated by what actions governments take in terms of building the confidence and the trust toward currently. Previously, the Zimbabwe dollar, for example, was not able to pay for certain duties when you are importing into Zimbabwe, which I believe for me was not the best way to capacitate and create demand for the local currency to gain value. Because once the government, which is the biggest spender, does not accept its own currency for certain aspects and is selective on its currency acceptance, then naturally the market will react to whatever precedent the government has set. So we hope that this will be looked into in a way that will feed into the demand for the local currency and boost confidence and trust in the currency.
Okay, so over to you now, Terence Zimwara. Let us hear from you. How can the confidence of the people, be boosted towards bridging that trust deficit gap that you have stated currently exists?
Well, I believe, sticking to what they say. If the central bank says we've got this much gold to back this currency, it has to stay like that. In the past, I think we were told that this other currency was backed 1:1 with the US, and things didn't actually work out. So that's where this trust or confidence deficit, is created. So the hope now is, everyone trusts gold. So we just hope it works. But I think for people that are in the know, maybe if there's a mechanism that allows economists, say like Malone here, to actually verify, say, okay, this is what the central bank is saying, and I can verify that indeed there's this much gold. When those guys can actually see it, it makes it easier for the rest of the population to trust what is happening, because there is a third party which is verifying that. So that's the only way. Maybe it's unconventional, but because we are where we are now, we need to think outside the box. And maybe those are some of the ways that we can, build confidence in this currency. Then ultimately, over time, I think doing things the right way, making sure that we are productive, everyone uses the currency, the playing field is level. There are no sacred cows, so to speak. If that is done, then over time, this currency might as well, be the different one from the rest that we get in the past.
Okay, let us go back to you now, Malone. Gwadu. We would like to, find out, do you think, or are there any assumptions that this just might be, politically motivated? Because we do understand that shortly from now, Zimbabweans will be going to the polls to, cast their votes moving forward. But let us hear from you. Is there any political backing around this? And if there is, what is it?
So I wouldn't submit it as a political gimmick because we recently concluded our harmonized elections in 2023. And so we're looking at a 5-year term for the political players if you want to look at it from a political lens. But suffice to say, I think it was a long overdue activity because inflationary pressures started in 2022 and they've been, on and off highs and lows for some time now. So there need to have a sustainable currency stability beyond, the highs and lows that policy interventions that bring to the market. So the gold coin was really a test to the market, and previously called the gold coin was a test to the market, and its acceptance is what bolstered them for them to look into a commodity-backed currency. And like what Terence has alluded to earlier, there is then need to have a way of verifying the gold holding we have and the market liquidity, that is the money supply of the ZiG, to ensure that there is confidence and there is trust in the particular currency. And that will be all.
There are also, insinuations that the current drought that Zimbabwe is facing has some form of relationship to the failures of the Zim dollars. But let's hear from you. Do you share in that school of thought?
Indeed, I share that thought. As I mentioned earlier, we have limited foreign currency generating capacity as a country, and now the drought has added foreign currency pressure on the already existing, currency deficit which we have. We are now forced to import our foodstuffs from El Nino-free countries, and we need to import using, obviously, foreign currency. So this will then have pressure on our foreign currency demand which we have, and the local money supply which will be available to buy food for our nation, for the areas that are under threat. So this will then probably jeopardize the foreign currency, the exchange rates and the currency framework which we're trying to build, because the El Nino and the drought has really put a lot of our population under food security risk.
Okay, lastly, I would want to hear from you as an economist that, pays close attention to all of these activities. What is your outlook, your prediction for the Zim gold, say for the second quarter of the year?
I foresee a bit of market acceptance and stability in the short term because of the gold being a safe haven and a widely accepted basis for anchor any asset. But subsequently to that, it's largely a variable that will be fed into based on the actions that the authorities take and the market, how it will react to it. Like I mentioned, there are so many gray areas around how the currency work and the level of acceptance which it will have, especially from government. Because government, in this case, is the one that will set the pace in terms of its acceptance and its stability. So if it acts in the correct manner, I foresee wide market acceptance and probably building of trust subsequently going forward. But in the medium to long term, there are many aspects to look into that needs to be further realigned to strengthen the currency for both local usage and even internationally. You'll be aware that Zimbabwe is a signatory to the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. So it's very, very important for this currency to work so that we can be able to be competitive and build our export generating capacity that I mentioned earlier needs a bit of diversification.
Okay, let's hear from you, Terence, your outlook for the Zim gold for the second quarter, short-term and long-term outlook. What would you say these are for you?
Well, a lot will depend on what is going to happen in the next, I think, 20 days or so. Acceptance, how people, have confidence in the currency. If we can manage that, Malone spoke about what the central bank can do. Conscientize people, educate people, try to dispel the past notions. That way, people will accept the currency, and when it's accepted, I think in every other quarter, in the next few years, we can have a currency that everyone accepts here. And with time, I think we can even use it beyond borders. But it will depend on what they are going to do in the next few days, which is really critical in my view.
Okay, I have been speaking with Malone Gwadu, who is an economist, and Terence Zimwara, who is also an economic analyst. Thank you for your insight on development in Zimbabwe. Thank you for all of the insights this morning.
Thank you. It was a pleasure having you.
Well, there you have it. Insightful conversation there on developments currently ongoing in Zimbabwe. The introduction of the Zim dollar, that is ZiG, Z-I-G, the ZiG in Zimbabwe, and halting of operations with the US dollar and the Zim dollar. And this came into being trying to stabilize the volatile currency that we have seen happen for quite a while now, and also to address the economic challenges that Zimbabwe is facing. You will recall that Zimbabwe had announced the introduction of this currency, which is a move which is the sixth attempt that we have seen from the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe towards establishing a functional local currency since 2008. And in the words of my guest, they said that the level of acceptability is still quite low as Zimbabweans are still holding on to the US dollar and other currencies that have served as a hedge against inflation over time and are slow towards accepting the Zim gold. But we will be on the lookout to see how the market will be faring in the coming days, and we hope for the best for Zimbabwe. Well, this is where we draw the curtains on today's edition of the program Business Daily. It is the final one for the week, but Business Daily will be with you again on Monday. But join the conversation on social media and let us hear your thoughts. My name is Chiamaka Enendu. Thank you for watching, and bye for now.